Please, you have to hide me. Don't tell them I'm here. Let go of my hand. What is happening? Sophie.
Where are they? They moved together and it felt natural, easy. His hand warm.
Sophie Hart's life was falling apart in slow motion. First, she'd been fired from Rosie's coffee shop that morning for the crime of telling a customer he couldn't harass teenage baristas. The manager had actually said, "The customer is always right, Sophie," even when the customer was a middle-aged creep hitting on a 16-year-old. So she quit, which was basically the same as being fired except with more dignity and less unemployment benefits. Second, her landlord had texted at noon, rent overdue, pay by Friday or eviction notice Monday. Third, her bank account currently held $247.82. Rent was $1,200, which was why Sophie was sitting on a bench in Central Park at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, drinking a $6 latte she absolutely couldn't afford, trying very hard not to cry in public. The latte was ridiculous. She knew it was ridiculous, but it was her last day of having any money at all. And if she was going to be homeless by Monday, she wanted one final taste of the overpriced vanilla oat milk lattes that had become her small luxury. Pathetic, she muttered to herself, taking another sip. 25 years old and crying into expensive coffee. Very dignified, Sophie. That's when she saw him, a man in a full tuxedo sprinting through Central Park like his life depended on it. Not jogging, not running for exercise. Full-on sprinting, his jacket flying behind him, bow tie undone and hanging loose, panic written across his admittedly handsome face. Sophie watched him run past, then slow, then look around desperately like he was searching for somewhere to hide. His eyes landed on her bench, and more specifically, on her. Before Sophie could process what was happening, the man grabbed her hand and dropped onto the bench beside her. "Please," he gasped, breathless and desperate. "Just play along. They can't know I ran." "What?" "Please, I'll explain everything. Just act like we're together, like we're on a date. Please." His hand was warm and slightly sweaty from running. His steel-gray eyes were wild with panic. And Sophie, for reasons she would question for the rest of her life, didn't pull away. "Who's they?" she whispered. "Everyone," he said, just as a small crowd of very angry, very well-dressed people rounded the corner. "James." A woman's voice cut through the park like a knife. "James Crawford, you get back here this instant." The man, James, pulled Sophie closer, his arm sliding around her shoulders in what would look like a casual boyfriend gesture to anyone watching. He leaned in, his face close to hers, whispering frantically, "I'm supposed to be getting married right now. Like right now, 15 minutes ago. But I can't. I don't love her. I barely know her. It's all arranged by my mother for some business merger. And I ran. I ran for my own wedding. And if they find me, they'll drag me back to that altar, and I'll wake up married to a woman I don't love for the rest of my life." Sophie's brain short-circuited. "You're a runaway groom?" "Technically, yes. Practically, I'm a disaster. But please, just for 5 minutes, be my girlfriend. Let them think I'm here with someone else. Once they pass by, I'll disappear and you'll never have to see me again." The well-dressed crowd was getting closer. Sophie could see a severe-looking woman in the lead, probably the mother, and a tall, blonde woman in what appeared to be a very expensive cream-colored dress that might have been a wedding gown if Sophie was seeing it correctly in the distance. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. "Okay," Sophie heard herself say. 5 minutes. James's entire body sagged with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much." He shifted his position to look more natural, pulling Sophie against his side like they'd been sitting together for hours. His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. He was warm and solid, and smelled like expensive cologne mixed with panic sweat. "What's your name?" he whispered. "Sophie." "Sophie. Okay, Sophie, you're my girlfriend. We've been dating 6 months. We met at a coffee shop. You're the love of my life. Can you do that?" I literally just got fired from a coffee shop, so that part's accurate at least. Despite the panic, James almost smiled. Perfect. Just go with it. The angry crowd reached them. The severe woman, definitely the mother, stopped so abruptly the people behind her nearly crashed into her. James Matthew Crawford, she hissed, her voice dripping with fury and barely controlled volume. What in God's name do you think you're doing? James squeezed Sophie's hand and stood, pulling her up with him. Hello, Mother. Victoria. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Sophie, my girlfriend. The silence that followed was so complete Sophie could hear her own heartbeat. The blonde woman, Victoria, the apparent bride, looked like she'd been slapped. You're what? My girlfriend, James repeated, his voice gaining confidence. We've been together for 6 months. I'm sorry, Victoria. Truly I am, but I can't marry you. I don't love you. I love Sophie. Sophie's brain screamed at her to run, to correct this insane lie, to explain she was just some random woman on a bench. But James's hand was gripping hers like a lifeline, and his entire body was trembling, and against all logic, Sophie squeezed back. This is absurd. The mother, Margaret Crawford, Sophie would learn later, snapped. James, you will return to the venue immediately and marry Victoria as planned. Whatever ridiculous crisis this is. It's not a crisis, Mother. It's the truth. I don't want to marry Victoria. I want to be with Sophie. Victoria's face had progressed from shock to rage. We had an agreement. Our families had an arrangement. You can't just... I can. I am. I'm sorry. James turned to Sophie, and the look in his eyes was so desperately grateful it made her chest ache. We should go. He pulled her away from the bench, walking quickly, his hand never leaving hers. Behind them, Margaret Crawford was shouting something about lawyers and contracts and family obligations, but James didn't stop. They made it 3 blocks before James finally slowed, pulling Sophie into a quiet side street. He let go of her hand and immediately ran both hands through his hair, destroying what was left of his formal styling. I am so sorry, he said. I am so sorry. I had no right to drag you into this. I just panicked, and you were there, and... You ran away from your own wedding, Sophie said, still processing. Like, literally ran away. I did. I absolutely did. He laughed, slightly manic. I stood at that altar, and the officiant asked if anyone objected, and I realized I objected. I was the groom, and I objected to my own wedding. So I left through the side door, stole a bike from a groomsman, rode it to Central Park, abandoned the bike, and then I saw you. This is insane. I know. This is like a movie. I know. I don't even know you. I know. James looked at her properly for the first time. I'm James Crawford, and I just completely destroyed your Saturday. Can I at least buy you another coffee to apologize? You were drinking one when I grabbed you. Sophie looked down at her hands. She dropped the latte when he'd pulled her up. Somewhere in Central Park was $6 worth of oat milk latte soaking into the grass. That was my last $6, she said without thinking. James's face crumpled with guilt. Then I definitely owe you coffee. And probably therapy. Do you drink regular coffee or... Vanilla oat milk latte. Grande. Extra vanilla. Specific. I like it. There's a place 2 blocks from here. Do you have time? Or do you need to get somewhere, or... Sophie thought about her empty apartment, and her empty bank account, and her empty future. I have time. They walked to the coffee shop in bizarre silence. James kept looking over his shoulder, like the wedding party might materialize. Sophie kept wondering if this was real, or if she'd had some kind of breakdown. And imagine the whole thing. Inside the coffee shop, James ordered her latte and got himself a black coffee. When the barista asked for a name, he hesitated. Smith, he said. James Smith. The barista rolled her eyes. Sure, buddy. In the tuxedo. Very undercover. They sat at a small table by the window. James wrapped his hands around his coffee cup and stared at it like it held answers. So, Sophie said, because someone had to say something, arranged marriage? Business merger disguised as a wedding. My mother runs Crawford Hotels. Victoria's father runs Ashford Resorts. Together they control half the luxury hotel market on the East Coast. I'm just the signature on the contract. That's medieval. That's my mother. She's been planning this for 2 years. I went along with it because he trailed off, because I always go along with what she wants, because fighting her is exhausting, because I'm a coward. You literally ran away from a wedding in front of hundreds of people. That's not cowardly. It's not brave either. Brave would have been saying no 2 years ago. This is just delayed panic. Sophie sipped her latte. It was perfect, which somehow made the whole day even more surreal. What happens now? I have no idea. My mother will call every connection she has to find me. Victoria's family will threaten lawsuits. The media will have a field day once someone leaks the story. And He looked at Sophie with tired eyes. I just ruined your life a little bit, didn't I? By pulling you into this. My life was already pretty ruined. I got fired this morning. I'm getting evicted Monday. You grabbing my hand was honestly not even in the top 3 worst things today. James stared at her. You got fired and you're getting evicted, and you still help me? You look desperate. I'm a sucker for desperate. Sophie smiled without humor. Plus, watching rich people's drama is way more entertaining than dwelling on my own problems. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started ringing continuously. James glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. That's Mother, and Victoria, and about 15 other people. He silenced the phone. They're not going to let this go. What are you going to do? I don't know. Hide? Leave the country? Fake my own death? Those all seem extreme. You don't know my mother. The phone buzzed again. Then Sophie's phone buzzed. She frowned and pulled it out. It was a news alert. James. Yeah. We're trending on social media. She turned her phone to show him. The headline read, Hotel heir James Crawford abandons altar for mystery woman. And there, in crystal clear high definition, was a photo of them in Central Park. James's arm around her, their hands clasped, her face visible enough to be recognizable. Oh no, James whispered. Oh no, Sophie agreed. Her phone started ringing. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Is this Sophie Hart? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Yes. This is Margaret Crawford, James's mother. We need to talk. Immediately. Sophie looked at James, who had gone even paler. About what? Sophie asked carefully. About the fact that you've just become the most talked about woman in New York. And about what it's going to cost to make you go away. The line went dead. Sophie lowered her phone slowly. Your mom wants to pay me to disappear. James's jaw clenched. Of course she does. How much do you think she'll offer? Honestly, whatever it takes. She doesn't care about money. She cares about control. He looked at Sophie with sudden intensity. You could take it. You said you're getting evicted. She'll probably offer enough to solve all your problems. Sophie should say yes. She absolutely should say yes. This wasn't her mess. She owed this stranger nothing. Or, she heard herself say, we could make this really interesting. James blinked. What? Your mom wants me gone because I'm ruining her plan, right? The wedding, the merger, the whole thing. But what if instead of going away, I stayed? I don't understand. Sophie didn't fully understand either, but the idea was forming even as she spoke. You need to not marry Victoria. I need money. What if we made a deal? What kind of deal? You pay me, not to leave, to stay, to actually be your fake girlfriend long enough that your mother can't force you back to Victoria. We make it believable. Public. Documented. A week, maybe? Then we break up. Naturally, you're free. I get paid. Everyone moves on. James stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You want to fake date me? I want to solve both our problems. You need an exit from an arranged marriage. I need money to not be homeless. This could work. This is insane. So it was running from your wedding, but you did it anyway. A long moment passed. James's phone buzzed again. So did Sophie's. The world was catching up to them fast. How much? James asked quietly. What? How much would you need to do this? Sophie thought about rent, about her empty bank account, about the fact that she was considering the most ridiculous plan of her life, $50,000. She expected him to laugh, to say no, to leave. Instead, James held out his hand. 1 week. We fake date for 1 week. Make it believable enough that my mother can't drag me back to Victoria. Then we stage a mutual breakup and go our separate ways. Deal? Sophie looked at his hand, at his desperate eyes, at the absurdity of everything. She shook his hand. Deal. And just like that, Sophie Hart agreed to become the fake girlfriend of a runaway millionaire. She had no idea her life was about to get infinitely more complicated. Sophie's first clue that she'd made a terrible decision came at 7 a.m. the next morning, when a town car pulled up outside her apartment building. Not an Uber, not a taxi, an actual town car with a driver in a suit who said, Miss Hart, Mr. Crawford sent me to collect you. Collect me for what? Moving day, miss. Mr. Crawford has arranged for your belongings to be transferred to his residence. Sophie, who'd been awake for 10 minutes and was still in her pajamas, stared at the driver. I'm sorry, what? The driver handed her a note in James's handwriting. Sophie, Mother's already sent investigators. They'll use your apartment to prove you're lying about us. We need to sell this, which means you need to move in. I know this wasn't part of the original deal. I'll increase the payment to $75,000. Car will wait while you pack. I'm sorry. James. Sophie looked at the driver, at her crumbling apartment building, at the eviction notice taped to her door that her landlord had posted sometime overnight. Give me 20 minutes, she said. Everything Sophie owned fit into 3 suitcases and 2 boxes. The furniture was trash anyway, mostly things she found on the curb or bought at thrift stores. She packed her clothes, her few books, her parents' photo album, the only thing that survived their car accident when she was 12, and her grandmother's recipe box. 23 minutes later, she was sitting in the back of a town car heading toward Manhattan's Upper East Side, watching her old life disappear in the rear-view mirror. James's building was the kind of place Sophie had only seen in movies. Doorman, marble lobby, an elevator that required a key just to access the penthouse floor. The penthouse, Sophie muttered. Of course he lives in the penthouse. The driver helped her with her boxes, rode up with her, and left her standing outside a door that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. She knocked. James opened it immediately, looking like he hadn't slept. He was in jeans and a t-shirt. The first time she'd seen him in normal clothes, and his hair was messily perfect in that way rich people's hair always was. Sophie. Hi. Come in. I'm so sorry about the short notice, but Mother called at 6 a.m. threatening to. He stopped, seeming to realize he was rambling. Come in. Please. The apartment was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Modern furniture that looked like art installations. A kitchen bigger than her entire old apartment. Everything in shades of gray and white and expensive. This is... Sophie couldn't find words. Too much. James offered. I know. Mother decorated it. I've never changed anything because she'd take it as an insult. He ran a hand through his hair. Your room is this way. He led her down a hallway past what appeared to be at least 4 other rooms. The bedroom he showed her was bigger than her old apartment, with its own bathroom and a bed that looked like sleeping on a cloud. This is insane, Sophie said. I know. I'll have your boxes brought up. And, we need to talk. About the plan. About what happens next. He looked as uncomfortable as she felt. My mother is hosting a dinner party tonight. For close friends. Which really means 50 of New York's most influential people. She's demanded I bring you. Tonight? As in today tonight? She wants to inspect you. To figure out if you're real or if you're just someone I hired to mess up her plans. James's smile was humorless. Which, I mean, you're someone I hired, but she can't know that. What do I do at a dinner party for rich people? Honestly, just be yourself. You're supposed to be the reason I ran for my wedding. You're supposed to be so amazing that I couldn't marry Victoria. Just don't let Mother intimidate you. She's going to try. Sophie sat on the edge of the incredibly comfortable bed. James, I don't have clothes for a dinner party. I don't have anything for this world. I've thought of that. He pulled out his phone, typed something. I have a stylist coming in an hour. She'll get you everything you need. Charge it all to me. I can't. You can and you will. This is part of the deal. I'm asking you to enter my world, which means I provide the armor. He sat in the chair across from the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. Sophie, if you want out, say so now. This is going to get messy. Mother is ruthless. Victoria's family is threatening lawsuits. The media is camped outside the building. This is way more than I originally asked for. Sophie thought about $75,000. About never worrying about rent again. About being able to finish her pastry certification without working 3 jobs. I'm in, she said. But if your mom makes me cry, I'm charging you extra. James almost smiled. Deal. The dinner party was a nightmare wrapped in expensive cloth napkins. The stylist, a terrifying woman named Vera, had dressed Sophie in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than her old car. Her hair was professionally styled. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like someone who belonged at these events. She felt like an imposter. James's hand found hers as they entered the private dining room of some restaurant Sophie couldn't even pronounce. You look beautiful, he whispered. Just breathe. And remember, you're the woman I love. Act like it. Right, the woman he loved, who he'd known for exactly 36 hours. Margaret Crawford was holding court at the head of the table, looking like every movie villain in a designer suit. She saw them enter, and her smile was a weapon. James and Sophie, how lovely that you could join us. The way she said Sophie made it sound like a communicable disease. They sat. James kept his hand on Sophie's knee end of the table, either for support or to keep her from running. Maybe both. So, Sophie, Margaret's at the moment the first course arrived. James tells me you work in food service? I'm a pastry chef. Well, training to be one. How quaint. And where did you attend culinary school? I'm doing a certification program at night, working my way through it. Margaret's smile sharpened. How industrious. And your family? What do they do? They're dead, Sophie said flatly. Car accident when I was 12. The table went silent. James's hand tightened on her knee. Margaret recovered quickly. How tragic. And you've been on your own since then? Foster care until 18. Then yeah, on my own. How difficult that must have been. Margaret's tone suggested the opposite of sympathy. It's remarkable that you and James found each other despite such different backgrounds. Love doesn't care about backgrounds, James said, his voice tight. Doesn't it? Margaret sipped her wine. Sophie, dear, you must understand that James's life is complicated. There are expectations, obligations, a certain standard required of anyone in our family. Mother, James started, I'm simply saying that relationships require compatibility, similar values, similar worlds. Margaret looked directly at Sophie. You seem like a lovely girl, but are you truly prepared for what being with my son entails? Sophie felt the whole table watching her, judging her, waiting for her to crack. She thought about every foster home that had looked at her like she wasn't good enough, every rich customer who treated her like she was invisible, every time someone had assumed she was less because she had less. With all due respect, Mrs. Crawford, Sophie said clearly, I don't think James needs someone from his world. I think he needs someone who sees him as a person, not a business asset. Margaret's eyes went cold, but someone at the table laughed. A man in his 60s at the far end. She's got spirit, Margaret. I like her. Thank you, Richard, Margaret said icily, though I don't recall asking your opinion. The dinner continued in awkward tension. James barely ate, his hand never leaving Sophie's knee. Every time Margaret asked a pointed question, Sophie answered honestly, refusing to pretend to be something she wasn't. By dessert, Margaret had switched tactics. James, I've been thinking about the Victoria situation. There is no Victoria situation, James said firmly. Her family is threatening legal action. The merger is in jeopardy. This impulsive decision of yours has consequences. Then I'll deal with the consequences. Will you? Or will you run from those two? Margaret's voice cut like glass. You've always been weak, James. Easily influenced. I wonder how long this infatuation will last before you realize your mistake. She's not a mistake. Isn't she? A girl from nowhere with nothing, who just happened to be available the exact moment you needed an excuse to abandon your responsibilities. Margaret smiled coldly. Forgive me for being skeptical. Sophie stood abruptly. Excuse me. I need some air. She left the table, James calling her name, but she didn't stop until she reached the restaurant's lobby. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard, fighting tears of rage and humiliation. James appeared beside her seconds later. Sophie, I'm so sorry. She had no right. She's right, though, isn't she? I am from nowhere. I do have nothing. And I am just an excuse. Sophie laughed bitterly. At least she's honest about it. You're not an excuse. You're... James stopped, seeming to realize he didn't know how to finish that sentence. You didn't have to do this. The dinner. Any of it. You're paying me $75,000. I'll survive dinner with your dragon mother. She made you cry. She made me angry. There's a difference. Sophie wiped her eyes. Can we go home? I've hit my quota of rich people judging me for one night. Yes, absolutely. I'll call the car. As they waited, James's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face went pale. What? Sophie asked. He showed her the screen. A text from an unknown number, with a photo attached. The photo showed Sophie and James in the restaurant lobby, her leaning against the wall. Him, standing close, looking concerned. It could easily be interpreted as romantic. The text read, enjoying the show. Let's see how long this little actress lasts. Victoria, James said grimly. She's watching us. Sophie felt a chill. That's not creepy at all. She's angry. She probably thinks you actually stole me from her wedding. She's not going to let this go easily. What can she do? The wedding's canceled. You're not marrying her. Victoria doesn't accept losing. Ever. James pocketed his phone. We need to be careful. They rode home in silence. Sophie stared out at the city lights, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Inside the penthouse, James showed her how to work the various smart home features, gave her keys and security codes, and stood awkwardly in the living room like he didn't know what to do next. So, Sophie said finally, we're roommates now. Fake dating roommates. Apparently. James managed a small smile. Thank you for tonight. For not running when my mother was cruel. I've dealt with worse than your mother. I doubt that. You'd be surprised what foster care teaches you about surviving terrible people. Sophie kicked off her painful heels. Look, we should probably establish some ground rules for this arrangement. Good idea. Rule 1, separate bedrooms. This is fake. It stays fake. Absolutely agreed. Rule 2, no lying to each other. We can lie to everyone else, but not to each other. Fair. Rule 3, when this week is up, we're done. Clean break. No complications. James hesitated on that one. Agreed. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. I should sleep, Sophie said. Tomorrow's going to be weird too, isn't it? Probably weirder. Mother's planning a charity event. She'll want us there. Of course she will. Sophie headed toward her room, then turned back. James, why did you run? Really? It can't just be that you don't love Victoria. James was quiet for a long moment. Because when I stood at that altar, I realized I'd spent my entire life doing what I was told, being who I was supposed to be. And I looked at Victoria, who was doing the same thing, and I thought, is this it? Is this all life is? Doing what's expected until we die. And I ran, because for once I wanted to choose, even if I was choosing chaos. Sophie smiled sadly. I get that. Do you? I ran from foster care the day I turned 18. Didn't have a plan. Didn't have money. But I had a choice, finally. So I ran too. She paused. We're both runners, I guess. Maybe. Or maybe we're both just trying to find something worth staying for. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than they should have been. Good night, James, Sophie said softly. Good night, Sophie. She closed her bedroom door and leaned against it, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. This was fake. This was business. This was 1 week, and then $75,000 in freedom. She needed to remember that. But as she lay in the most comfortable bed she'd ever slept in a penthouse that cost more than she'd earned in a lifetime, pretended to date a man she barely knew, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that she was falling into something far more dangerous than a simple arrangement. Outside her door, James stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at her closed door, feeling exactly the same way. Is Sophie falling for James already? Is this still fake or getting real? Drop a like if you're Team Sophie. Comment. Should she trust him or take the money and run? Subscribe to True Life Untold Tales for next chapter. Margaret's next move will shock you. Share this story now. Day 3 of being James Crawford's fake girlfriend started at 2 a.m. with insomnia and desperation. Sophie couldn't sleep. The penthouse was too quiet, the bed too comfortable, the whole situation too surreal. She'd been lying awake for 2 hours, replaying Margaret's cruel words and Victoria's threatening text when she finally gave up. She wandered the kitchen in her pajamas, old NYU t-shirt and flannel pants, supremely unglamorous, thinking she'd make tea or maybe stress-eat whatever expensive food James's housekeeper had stocked the fridge with. Instead, she found ingredients. Real ingredients. Flour, butter, eggs, vanilla, chocolate. Before she could think better of it, Sophie was baking. She found mixing bowls, measuring cups, a stand mixer that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. She preheated the oven. She started making chocolate chip cookies from her grandmother's recipe, the one thing that always calmed her mind. She was mixing chocolate chips into the dough when she heard footsteps. James appeared in the kitchen doorway, also in pajamas, expensive-looking t-shirt and flannel pants that somehow looked designer. His hair adorably messed from sleep. Are you baking? He asked, sounding surprised. I couldn't sleep. Stress baking is my therapy. Sophie held up the bowl. Want to help? I don't know how to bake. Then want to learn? James hesitated, then moved into the kitchen. Sure, why not? It's 2 a.m. and my life is already absurd. Sophie taught him how to scoop cookie dough onto baking sheets. He was terrible at it, making them all different sizes, getting dough on his hands, looking charmingly frustrated when they didn't turn out perfect. They don't have to be perfect, Sophie said, laughing at his concentrated expression. They just have to taste good. I'm a perfectionist. Mother trained it into me. Well, Mother isn't here. Messy is okay. They slid the trays into the oven and cleaned up while waiting. James kept sneaking glances at Sophie, like he was trying to figure her out. Why pastry? He asked finally. Why not, I don't know, something more stable? Because my grandmother used to bake. Before she died, before my parents died, when life was still good. She let me stand on a stool and help her make cookies and cakes and pies. It's the only good memory I have from before everything fell apart. Sophie wiped down the counter. When I'm baking, I'm back there. Safe. Happy. Even if it's just for a little while. That's beautiful. It's survival. We all have our coping mechanisms. What's yours? James was quiet for a moment. Work. Staying busy. Never stopping long enough to think about whether I'm actually happy. That sounds exhausting. It is. The timer went off. Sophie pulled out perfect golden chocolate chip cookies, the smell filling the kitchen with warmth and comfort. James tried one, still hot, and his eyes widened. Oh my God! Good. This is the best thing I've ever tasted. What did you? He took another bite. Sophie, you could charge $20 per cookie, and people would pay it. You're just saying that because you haven't eaten anything that didn't come from a 5-star restaurant. I'm saying it because it's true. These are incredible. They sat at the kitchen island eating warm cookies at 2:30 a.m., and for the first time since this whole arrangement started, Sophie felt almost normal. "Can I ask you something?" James said, "Sure. Why did you really agree to this?" "The truth, not the money answer. Though I know that's important. But there's something else." Sophie considered lying, then remembered Rule 2, no lying to each other. "Because I've spent my whole life being invisible. In foster care, I was just another kid in the system. At work, I'm just a girl behind the counter. Even in New York, I'm just nobody. But with you, for 1 week, I get to be somebody. Someone people pay attention to. Someone who matters, even if it's fake." She smiled sadly. "Pathetic, right?" "No, honest, and not pathetic at all." James reached for another cookie. "I've spent my whole life being visible, and I'd give anything to be invisible sometimes. Maybe we both wanted what the other has. Grass is always greener." Something like that. They finished the cookies in comfortable silence. When Sophie stood to clean up, James stopped her. "Let me? You cooked, I'll clean." "You don't have to." "I want to. Besides, you've introduced me to 2 a.m. stress baking. It's only fair I learn the cleanup part too." They cleaned together, moving around the kitchen in easy rhythm. Sophie found herself laughing at James's commentary about his mother's opinion on kitchen cleanliness. She'd fainted she saw me loading a dishwasher, and his stories about growing up with staff who did everything. "I didn't know people cleaned their own bathrooms until college." "You were sheltered," Sophie observed. "I was isolated. There's a difference." As Sophie headed back to her room, James called out, "Same time tomorrow? If you can't sleep? You want to make stress baking a regular thing? I want to learn how to make those cookies again. And maybe—" He paused. "Maybe I like having company at 2 a.m. Sophie smiled. "Same time tomorrow." Day 4 brought the charity gala Margaret had mentioned. It was at the Crawford Hotel's Grand Ballroom, because of course the family-owned hotels, and there would be 300 guests, all of whom would be watching Sophie and judging her worthiness. No pressure. Vera, the stylist, returned with an arsenal of dresses. The one she selected for Sophie was deep emerald green, elegant, sophisticated, and cost more than Sophie's old car. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up," Sophie muttered, looking at herself in the mirror. "You look like you belong," Vera corrected. "Now, let's practice your walk in those heels." By the time the event started, Sophie's feet hurt and her nerves were shot. James appeared in a tailored tuxedo that made him look like a movie star, and when his eyes landed on her, something shifted in his expression. "You look stunning," he said quietly. "You look like James Bond." "I'll take that as a compliment." He offered his arm. "Ready to face the sharks?" "Not even slightly." "Perfect. Fake it till you make it." The ballroom was obscenely elegant. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, a live orchestra. Sophie had never seen so much wealth in one place. James kept her close, his hand on her lower back, subtly possessive in a way that felt protective rather than controlling. He introduced her to an endless stream of people whose names she immediately forgot, always adding, "Sophie's a brilliant pastry chef," to make her sound impressive. They were making their way through the crowd when a voice cut through the music. "James." "Sophie, how lovely." Victoria Ashford appeared like a beautiful ghost in a white gown that probably cost more than a car. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. "Victoria," James said tersely, "I didn't expect to see you here. It's my father's foundation, too. Did you forget?" Victoria's eyes raked over Sophie. "Nice dress. Vera's work." "Yes," Sophie said carefully. "I used to use her, too, before I realized her taste was pedestrian." Victoria sipped her champagne. "Tell me, Sophie, are you enjoying playing Cinderella?" "I'm not playing anything." "Aren't you? Come now, we both know what this is." James needed an exit strategy, and you needed... What exactly? Money? Fame? A taste of the good life. Victoria stepped closer. "How much is he paying you?" Sophie's heart hammered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" "Because I had an interesting conversation with one of the park vendors yesterday. Apparently, they saw James grab a random woman's hand and then heard him offer her money. Funny coincidence, isn't it?" James's hand tightened on Sophie's back. "Victoria," This isn't the place. Oh, I think it's the perfect place. All these people wondering about the mysterious Sophie. Maybe they should know the truth. What do you want? James asked coldly. What I've always wanted. You. The merger. Everything we planned. Victoria's smile was predatory. End this farce. Admit Sophie is a hired actress. We can salvage the arrangement, blame cold feet, move forward. That's not happening. Then I'll expose her myself. With what evidence? A vendor who thinks they heard something. Victoria pulled out her phone. With this, she showed them a photo. Sophie and James in the coffee shop the first day. Sitting close, Sophie's shocked expression clear as James spoke. The timestamp showed it was right after the park incident. I have 12 witnesses who saw you grab her hand like a stranger, Victoria said sweetly. I have security footage from the coffee shop showing you didn't know each other. And I have financial records that show a large wire transfer from your account to a shell company the day after you ran. It's not hard to put together. Sophie felt cold. You've been following us? I've been protecting my interests. And James is my interest. Victoria pocketed her phone. So here's my offer. End this now, publicly, and I won't release the evidence. Continue lying, and tomorrow morning every news outlet in New York will know Sophie Hart is a paid actress playing girlfriend. James looked at Sophie, his face conflicted. Sophie made a decision. Do it, she said to Victoria. Release your evidence. Tell everyone I'm fake. Both James and Victoria stared at her. Sophie, James started, because you know what? I don't care. I'm not from your world. I don't care about your approval or your gossip or your judgment. You can call me a fake all you want. At least I'm honest about who I am, which is more than you can say. Sophie turned to James. I'm leaving. You don't have to pay me. You don't have to protect me. I'll tell the truth myself before she can twist it. She walked away before James could stop her, heading for the exit, her vision blurry with angry tears. She made it to the lobby before James caught up. Sophie, wait. Let me go, James. This was a mistake. Victoria's right. I don't belong here. That's not true. Isn't it? Look at this place. Look at these people. I'm a joke to them. A story. The girl who thought she could play in their world. I don't care what they think. You should. It's your world. These are your people. You're my people, James said, and the words came out raw and honest. These past 4 days with you, it's the first time I felt like a real person in years. I don't want to lose that. Sophie stared at him. James, this is fake. We barely know each other. I know you stress bake at 2 a.m. I know you burn toast but make incredible cookies. I know you stand up to people even when you're terrified. I know you see me. Actually see me, not my money or my name. Is that fake? It's not enough. Maybe not, but it's more than I've ever had. He reached for her hand, and Sophie let him take it. Come back inside, he said quietly. Not for them. For me. Let's dance. Let's have champagne. Let's give them a show worth talking about. And tomorrow, when Victoria releases whatever evidence she has, we'll deal with it. Together. Sophie shouldn't agree. Should walk away. Protect herself. End this before it hurt more. One dance, she said. Then we talk about what happens next. One dance. They returned to the ballroom. The orchestra was playing something slow and romantic. James led Sophie onto the dance floor and pulled her close, closer than necessary for a waltz. They moved together, and it felt natural. Easy. His hand warm on her waist. Their fingers interlaced. Their faces close enough that Sophie could count his eyelashes. I don't know how to do this, James admitted. The real relationship thing. I've only ever done arranged marriages and business deals. I don't know how either. I've never had anyone stick around long enough to figure it out. Maybe we could not know together. James, I know this started fake. I know the timing is crazy. I know we're from different worlds. But somewhere between running for my wedding and eating cookies at 2 a.m., this stopped being fake for me. And if that's one-sided, if you just want the money in the week, I'll understand. But if there's even a chance you feel it too. Sophie kissed him. Not for cameras. Not for show. because she wanted to, and James kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Sophie whispered, "This is a terrible idea." "The worst," James agreed. "It's going to get messy. Catastrophically messy. Your mother hates me. My mother hates everyone. Victoria's going to expose us. Let her." They kissed again, and Sophie felt herself falling terrifyingly fast for a man she'd known less than a week. Across the ballroom, Victoria watched with narrowed eyes and pulled out her phone. Tomorrow, she'd destroy Sophie Hart. But tonight, for just a few more hours, Sophie let herself believe in fairy tales. The story broke at 8 a.m. Sophie woke to her phone buzzing nonstop, notifications exploding across the screen. She grabbed it groggily, still half asleep in James's guest room. Except it wasn't a guest room anymore, because last night after the gala they'd stayed up talking until 4 a.m., and maybe she'd fallen asleep on his couch, and maybe he covered her with a blanket, and the headline on her phone made her fully wake up. Crawford Ayers' girlfriend exposed. $50,000 paid actress in wedding escape scheme. Sophie's blood went cold. The article had everything. Photos of James grabbing her hand in the park. Security footage from the coffee shop showing they were strangers. Financial records showing the wire transfer. Victoria had clearly hired excellent investigators. Testimony from park vendors saying James had propositioned a random woman. And worst of all, James's original offer in the coffee shop, secretly recorded. His voice crystal clear. 1 week. We fake date for 1 week. I'll pay you $50,000. Then we stage a breakup and go our separate ways. Sophie's own voice responding. Deal. The article painted her as a con artist, a gold digger, a woman who'd taken advantage of a desperate man for money. The comments were worse. She saw a payday and grabbed it. Professional girlfriend for hire. How much to hire her? Asking for a friend. Crawford deserves better than some escort. Sophie sat on the couch where she'd fallen asleep, phone shaking in her hands, feeling like she might throw up. Sophie! James appeared from his bedroom, already dressed, his face pale. His phone was in his hand, showing the same article. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I'm so sorry. I should have anticipated this. I should have protected you better. You literally hired me to be your fake girlfriend. Sophie said numbly. This is exactly what I am. What we agreed to. Why are you apologizing for the truth? Because the truth is more complicated than that article suggests. Is it? Because they have recordings, James. They have me agreeing to take money to pretend to date you. That's not complicated. That's just fact. James sat beside her, careful not to touch her. What happened after is fact too. Us talking until 4 a.m. You falling asleep on my couch. Me not wanting to wake you because you looked peaceful. That's real. Real doesn't matter when everyone thinks it's fake. Sophie's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Sophie Hart. A man's voice, professional but cold. Yes. This is David Chun from page 6. I'd like to ask you some questions about your arrangement with James Crawford. Specifically, are you denying you were paid $50,000 to pose as his girlfriend? Sophie hung up. The phone immediately rang again. Different number. Then again. Then text messages started flooding in. Media requests. Angry messages from strangers. Someone had found her old Instagram and was commenting on every photo. Make it stop, Sophie whispered. James took her phone gently and turned it off. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Victoria made sure of that. But Sophie, we can fix this. How? By telling everyone that yes, you paid me, but then we actually caught feelings? That sounds even more pathetic. It sounds true. Truth doesn't matter when everyone's already decided who I am. There was a sharp knock on the penthouse door. James, tense, checked the security app and groaned. It's my mother. Of course it is. Margaret Crawford swept in without waiting for an invitation. Her expression a mix of fury and vindication. James, we need to talk. Privately. Anything you say to me, you can say in front of Sophie. Fine. Sophie, darling, The endearment dripped with poison. Thank you for your service. I assume James has paid you. Now please leave so I can clean up this disaster with my son. Mother, don't mother me. This girl has humiliated our family, made you a laughingstock. The Crawford name is associated with escorts and paid actresses. Margaret's voice rose. I warned you this would happen. I told you she was using you. She wasn't using me. I asked her. I paid her. This is my fault, not hers. Oh, James, always so naive. She accepted the money, didn't she? She agreed to the charade. She knew exactly what she was doing. Sophie stood. You're right. I did know. I knew I was getting paid. I knew it was fake. I also knew I was desperate, and your son offered me a solution, and I took it. If that makes me a terrible person in your eyes, fine. But at least I'm honest about what I am. And what are you exactly? Someone trying to survive, which is more than you've ever had to do. Margaret's eyes flashed. How dare you? How dare I what? Be poor? Need money? Not grow up with a trust fund? Sophie grabbed her bags, the few things she'd brought to Penthouse. I'm leaving. James, you don't owe me anything. Keep the money. Use it to pay for PR, to fix this mess. I'm going back to my real life. Sophie, please. James reached for her. Don't. Just don't. Sophie's voice cracked. This was always going to end badly. At least now I know exactly how. She left before either of them could stop her, taking the elevator down 40 floors with tears streaming down her face. In the lobby, photographers were waiting. Someone had tipped them off. Sophie Hart, is it true you're a paid escort? Did you sleep with Crawford for money? How much for a date, Sophie? Was any of it real? Sophie pushed through them, ignoring the questions, the cameras, the strangers who thought they knew her story. She made it to the subway, rode her to Brooklyn, walked to her friend's apartment, Rachel, from her old coffee shop job. Rachel opened the door, took one look at Sophie's face, and pulled her inside. I saw the news, Rachel said. Are you okay? I'm unemployed, homeless, humiliated nationally, and I think I'm in love with a man I knew for 6 days. So no, not okay. Rachel made tea. Sophie told her everything. The wedding escape, the deal, the fake dating that became real feelings, the exposure. So, what are you going to do? Rachel asked when Sophie finished. Hide. Forever. Change my name. Move to Alaska. Or what? Or fight back. Tell your side. Explain what actually happened. No one cares about my side. James does. James has a mother and a company and a reputation to protect. He doesn't need me dragging him down further. Sophie's phone, which she turned back on, buzzed. A text from James. Please come back. We can fix this. Together. Another text. I don't care what they say about us. I care about you. And another. Please. Sophie stared at the messages, her heart doing complicated things. He really cares about you, Rachel observed. He hired me. This whole thing started as a transaction, and it became something else. That's allowed. Feelings are allowed. Not when the whole world knows they started fake. Her phone rang. James. Sophie almost didn't answer. Hello. Sophie, thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm at a friend's place in Brooklyn. I'm fine. You're not fine. The media is camped outside my building looking for you. Mother is threatening legal action against Victoria for the recordings. And he paused, I miss you. Is that insane? We've known each other less than a week, and I miss you. It's insane. But I miss you too, which is even more insane. James was quiet for a moment. Sophie, I need to tell you something. About the money. James, I don't care about the money. I never transferred it. Sophie froze. What? The $50,000. The article says I paid you, but I didn't. I never sent the wire transfer. It was supposed to happen after the week ended. But the week isn't over, and the money doesn't matter, and I need you to know you stayed, because you wanted to, not because you were paid to. Tears spilled down Sophie's cheeks. You're saying I went through all this for nothing? I'm saying you went through all this because somewhere between day 1 and day 6, we both stopped pretending. James, come back. Please. Not to the penthouse, if you don't want to, but come back to New York. Let me take you to dinner. A real dinner. A real date. Let's start over. No money. No deals. Just us. Sophie looked at Rachel, who was pretending not to eavesdrop, but clearly listening to every word. What if your mother tries to pay me to leave? I'll tell her you're not for sale. What if the media destroys me? I'll hire the best PR team in the country. We'll tell the truth. All of it. How we met. Why you agreed. What happened after. Let people judge all they want. I don't care anymore. You should care. It's your reputation. You're more important than my reputation. Sophie's heart cracked open. You barely know me. Then let's fix that. 60 dates. One for every day we should have had if this had started normally. I want to know everything. Your favorite color. Your worst fear. What makes you laugh at 2 a.m.? All of it. You're crazy. I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of losing you. Sophie wiped her eyes. One date. Just one. If it's terrible, we walk away. And if it's not terrible, then we see what happens. I can work with that. James's relief was audible. Tonight, 7 p.m., I know a place where the media won't find us. Where? My kitchen. I'll cook, or try to. Fair warning, I'll probably burn everything. Despite everything, Sophie smiled. Then I'll supervise. Deal. After hanging up, Sophie looked at Rachel. I'm an idiot, right? The biggest idiot, but also brave, and possibly in love. Rachel grinned. Go get your runaway groom. He's not my groom. We're just figuring it out. Sure, keep telling yourself that. Sophie borrowed clothes from Rachel, did her best to disguise herself with sunglasses and a hat, and took the subway back to Manhattan. The media was still camped outside James's building, but James had apparently planned for that. He'd sent his driver to a side entrance, helped her sneak up through a service elevator. When Sophie reached the penthouse, James was already in the kitchen, looking adorably stressed while reading a recipe on his phone. You're actually cooking? Sophie asked. I'm attempting to cook. There's a difference. He looked up and his whole face transformed. You came back. I'm an idiot. You're perfect. They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, just looking at each other. So, Sophie said, what are we making? Pasta. How hard can it be? Have you ever boiled water? No. Sophie laughed, really laughed. For the first time all day, this is going to be a disaster. The best kind of disaster. They cooked together. James burning the garlic and somehow destroying perfectly good pasta. Sophie laughing and correcting him and trying not to notice how good he looked concentrating on chopping vegetables. They ate their mediocre dinner at the kitchen island, talking about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, fears, dreams, the whole messy truth of who they really were. I want to open a bakery, Sophie admitted. Something small and mine, where people come not because it's trendy, but because it feels like home. You could do that. I could help. No, Sophie was firm. If I do it, I do it myself. I don't want your money, James. I just want... What? A partner. Someone who believes I can do it. James reached across the table, took her hand. I believe you can do anything. They cleaned up together, moving around each other in comfortable silence. As Sophie was leaving for Rachel's place, she wasn't ready to stay over, not yet. James caught her hand. Tomorrow. Another date? Tomorrow. He kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. And for the first time since the media exposure, Sophie thought maybe this could work. Maybe truth was stronger than scandal. Maybe love could survive being fake first. Maybe. Did James really never pay her? Is this real love or just guilt? Smash that like button if you think they belong together. Comment real if you believe the feelings. Fake if you think it's still a game. Subscribe to True Life Untold Tales. Next chapter is a finale, and you do not want to miss how this ends. Share with friends who love messy romance. 2 weeks after the scandal broke, Sophie and James's story was still trending, but for different reasons. They'd done the impossible. They'd told the truth. James had held a press conference where he laid out everything. The arranged marriage, running from his wedding, asking Sophie to help, the original deal, the money that was never transferred, and most importantly, falling in love despite the circumstances. Sophie had sat beside him, not hiding, not apologizing, just being honest. The media had tried to crucify them anyway, but something unexpected happened. People started defending them. Everyone's acting like he committed a crime. One viral tweet read, "He ran from an arranged marriage and fell for someone real." That's literally a romance novel. Another, "Y'all are mad at Sophie for taking money when she was about to be homeless? Make it make sense." The tide was turning. Slowly, but definitely. Victoria had tried one last attack, threatening lawsuits and exposing more evidence. But her own family had finally shut her down. Turned out they were relieved the wedding hadn't happened. Victoria had been threatening to back out for months anyway. Margaret was still furious, still threatened to disown James. But he'd called her bluff. "Do it," he'd said calmly. "Disown me. I'll build my own company. My own life, without your control." She'd back down. Slightly. Now, Sophie stood in a small commercial kitchen space in Brooklyn, signing a lease with shaking hands. Her bakery, her actual bakery, not funded by James. He'd offered 12 times, and she'd refused every time. Instead, she crowdfunded it, told her story online, asked for small investments, promised investors nothing except good pastries and honesty. She'd raised $100,000 in 3 weeks. The people believe in you, James had said when she'd shown him the final total. You inspired them. I inspired them to like dramatic love stories and invest in cake. There's a difference. Take the win, Sophie. Now, standing in what becomes Sophie's kitchen, she felt tears building. "You okay?" Rachel asked, having come to help with the walkthrough. "I'm opening a bakery." "Me, the foster kid who barely graduated high school. I'm doing it." "Hell yes you are." James appeared in the doorway, carrying paint samples. They were painting this weekend. Hands-on, no hired help, just them and friends making this space theirs. "Thoughts on sage green or cream for the walls?" he asked Sophie. "Cream. Warmer. Makes people want to stay." "Cream it is." He set down the samples and pulled Sophie into a hug. "I'm so proud of you. You say that every day. I'm proud of you every day." They'd been officially dating for 2 weeks. Real dating. Coffee shop dates where they split the bill. Movie nights where they argued about what to watch. Meeting each other's friends. Learning each other's weird habits. James hated mornings. Sophie sang off-key in the shower. James was organized to an obsessive degree. Sophie was chaos in human form. They fit together despite not fitting at all. "Dinner tonight?" James asked. "I promise not to burn the pasta this time." "You always burn the pasta." "I'm improving." "You burned water last week." "That was an anomaly." Sophie laughed and kissed him, right there in her empty bakery that smelled like possibility. 3 months later, Sophie's kitchen opened. The line wrapped around the block. Not because of the scandal, though that helped with publicity, but because Sophie's pastries were genuinely amazing. James was there, wearing a Sophie's Kitchen t-shirt she designed, helping serve customers despite having no experience in food service. "1 croissant?" he asked an elderly woman at the counter. "Make it 2, handsome. And tell Sophie these are the best pastries I've had since my mother's." When James relayed the message, Sophie beamed. The bakery was small, but perfect. Cream walls, mismatched vintage chairs, a display case filled with croissants, cookies, cakes, and tarts. Photos on the walls of Sophie's grandmother baking, her parents on their wedding day, her journey from foster care to here. One photo showed James and Sophie covered in flour, laughing in his kitchen during one of their many cooking disasters. "Is that your boyfriend?" a customer asked Sophie, pointing at the photo. Sophie looked at James across the bakery, arguing with a child about whether chocolate chip, or oatmeal raisin cookies were superior. Yeah, Sophie said. That's him. At closing, after the last customer left and the chairs were stacked, James found Sophie in the kitchen, icing a cake for tomorrow. First day was success, he said. First day was chaos. Tomorrow will be worse. You love chaos. I love organized chaos. There's a difference. James hopped onto the counter beside her workspace. Sophie, can I ask you something? You're literally sitting where I need to put this cake. Important question first, then I'll move. Sophie set down her piping bag. Okay, ask. James pulled out a small box. Sophie's heart stopped. James, it's not a ring. Yet. Calm down. He opened the box to reveal a key. It's to my apartment. Well, our apartment if you want. I know we've only been really dating for 3 months, and I know you like your independence, and I know my mother will have 17 opinions about this. Sophie kissed him, cutting off the rambling. Yes, she said against his lips. Yes. Yes, I'll move in. Yes, I want to wake up with you every morning. Yes, even though your mother will hate it, and it's fast and it's crazy. James's smile could have powered the city. Yeah. Even though I still can't cook, I'll teach you. Even though my morning mood is terrible, I'll buy you better coffee. Even though my mother might actually disown me this time, then we'll build our own family. They kissed surrounded by pastries and flour and the smell of vanilla, and it was perfect. 1 year later, Sophie and James stood in that same bakery, now expanded, thriving, employing 15 people. But today it was closed for a private event. Their wedding, not a massive society affair with 500 guests and magazines covering it. Just 50 people they actually loved, in the place that meant everything to Sophie. She wore a simple cream dress she'd found at a vintage shop. James wore a suit, but not a tuxedo. They'd agreed tuxedos had complicated histories. Rachel was maid of honor, James's college roommate. The only friend who'd stuck by him through the scandal was best man. Margaret sat in the front row looking like she'd swallowed a lemon, but she was there. That was progress. The officiant asked the traditional questions, then added one more. James, do you take Sophie to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and a hold, through scandals and media storms, through burnt pasta and 2 a.m. baking sessions, for as long as you both shall live? James's eyes were wet. I absolutely do. Sophie, do you take James to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, through controlling mothers and arranged marriage attempts, through runaway groom incidents and fake dating schemes, for as long as you both shall live? Sophie laughed through tears. I absolutely do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your. James was already kissing her before the officiant finished. The small crowd erupted in applause. As they walked back down the aisle, which was just a cleared bakery floor, Sophie whispered, We did it. We went from fake to forever. Best deal I ever made. James whispered back, You never even paid me. Best free deal I ever made. At the reception held in the bakery, catered with Sophie's pastries, Sophie's business partner gave a toast. To Sophie, who went from foster care to fire to success, and never let anyone tell her she couldn't. And to James, who had the good sense to grab her hand and hold on. James gave his own toast. To Sophie, who saved me from a marriage I didn't want and gave me one I can't live without. You were supposed to be a 5-minute favor. You became my entire life. Margaret even gave a toast, though hers was backhanded. To James and Sophie, may their marriage be more conventional than their courtship, though I suppose at a low bar. But she was smiling when she said it. Barely, but definitely smiling. Later, dancing to music from a speaker, no orchestra, no pretension, James held Sophie close. Any regrets? He asked. That we didn't meet normally? Sometimes. That we missed the normal dating progression? Maybe. Sophie looked up at him. But would I change it? Would you? No, because normal wouldn't have been us. Chaos brought us together. Chaos made us real. You know what the best part is? What? I don't have to fake anything anymore. Not smiles. Not feelings. Not love. It's all real. All real, Sophie agreed. They kissed as husband and wife in a bakery in Brooklyn, surrounded by people who believed in their messy, scandalous, beautiful love story. And somewhere in heaven, Sophie imagined her parents and grandmother were smiling because the girl who'd lost everything had found something worth keeping. A man who saw her, a business she'd built, a family she'd chosen. And it all started because a stranger in a tuxedo had grabbed her hand and whispered, "Play along." She'd played along and found her forever. The end. From fake to forever. If this story made you believe in second chances, destroy that like button. Comment your favorite moment. Was it the 2 a.m. baking? The gala confrontation? The wedding? Subscribe to True Life Untold Tales for more incredible stories of love, chaos, and finding your person in the most unexpected ways. Share this with anyone who needs to believe that sometimes the craziest beginnings have the happiest endings. Thank you for going on this journey with Sophie and James. God bless.